دار السلام ويهدي من يشاء إلى صراط مستقيم.
Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh, and welcome to this new episode of Gaza Massacre. I am Abdurrahman Saleh, your host, and today we have as our guest Dr. Saeed Zulfiqar, a political analyst. Dr. Saeed, we would like to welcome you very much to our program.
Thank you.
Dr. Saeed, let me ask you first, you were living in Europe yourself for a long time. How do people there see the truth about the status in Palestine generally, and are they really supportive of Israel, or just they don't see the picture clearly enough?
I think that in general one can say that they do not see the picture generally enough. They're not, of course there is a section of the population that is wholeheartedly for Israel. This is the right wing. The right wing in any, I've lived in France for the past 30-40 years, and I can tell you that on the right of the political spectrum, they are on the whole pro-American, and being pro-American they're automatically pro-Israel. Mm-hmm. But it is not ingrained in them in the same way as in America. The population is not directly, I shan't say influenced, but they're not directly involved in the conflict. This is a conflict which is in the press all the time. There's a sort of fatigue of people seeing the same story going on for years and not finding any solution to it. Now, what I'd like to emphasize is that the media, television and the written media, is, I shan't say infiltrated, but at least most of the people who are running the Middle East programs are Jewish. Many of them are not pro-Zionist, mm-hmm. and are honest in as far as they can be honest. But whenever you find, for instance, a non-Jewish person who is openly, I would say, neutral or objective, he is automatically got rid of. Mm-hmm. For instance, in Radio France Internationale, RFI, which is the French radio for the world, like the BBC World Service, used to be run by a man called Alain Ménargue. He was, I would say, I wouldn't say he's pro-Arab, but he was mm-hmm. not pro-Israel either. He was an objective person. Mm-hmm. The Jewish press and the Jewish lobbies attacked him for being one-sided, which was not true at all. He was mm-hmm. being fair-minded. He was being evil-handed, objective, yes. Equal-handed. He was fired. In the BBC, the same happened. If you remember a few years ago, about 4 years ago, 5 years ago, and Blair was accused of bombing Iraq, and the scientist committed suicide. There was somebody in the BBC who openly challenged the view mm-hmm. of the British government, which was to attack Iraq. They got rid of the fellow, they got rid of the director of the BBC at the time, and they appointed a Zionist, a Jewish British person who was a Zionist. Mm-hmm. So there is a heavy lobby which is financing a lot of the political parties, be they in Britain or in France, but mostly in America, who also have a clout. They insist on having people in the media who are pro-Israeli. Mm-hmm. This has an effect on the general public, because they only get half the picture, or 1/4 of the picture, or only the Israeli picture. Mm-hmm. We are also to blame. We, the Arabs and the Muslims, are to blame because we do not have anybody whom we propose to counter this. We could have had, with the amount of money that exists in the Gulf area or in Saudi Arabia, we could have bought up some media, some television stations, some newspapers that are for sale. They're automatically bought by either an Israeli, for instance, a man who's originally Egyptian, an Egyptian Jew called Naum Saban. Mm-hmm. He's one of the richest people in the world. Mm-hmm. He bought several stations in America, several TV stations. He bought one of the biggest press conglomerates in Germany. Saban is now an Israeli-American. Mm-hmm. But he is 100% pro-Sharon. He was one of Sharon's people. He's the principal financier of the Democratic Party in the United States. And even though he is from Alexandria, he is thoroughly pro-Zionist and pro-Sharon, extreme right-wing Likud. Now, he owns a huge conglomerate of newspapers, television stations, not only in America, also in Germany and elsewhere. He even tried to buy Al Jazeera at one time. Mm-hmm. They tried to force Qatar to privatize Al Jazeera so they could buy shares in it. Of course, thank God the Qatar government refused the privatization of the station. But this is how they move in, through forcing privatization. Then of course they buy shares. You don't know who buys the shares.
Mm-hmm.
Now in the French press, French media, it's practically dominated by them. But you get Jews who are not pro-Zionist and who can give a picture which is open-minded. On the whole, the people are now, the population, shall we say, who are conscious about what is happening in the Middle East is a minority. Mm-hmm. The vast majority are not interested.
But how come, Doctor, that they see the same footage and the same pictures of killing and children dead on the screen like we do, and then they don't have?
Well, they see much less. Mm-hmm. They see much less. I mean, and they don't show the same horrible pictures that we see. Mm-hmm. You see them much in a different line, and then don't forget that the Israelis have forbidden any foreign journalists from being inside Gaza. They've forbidden them. They're not allowed to go. Mm. The only ones who were there, the Chinese Xinhua agency, they bombed it 2 days ago. The Chinese Xinhua agency, press agency, is in Gaza. Mm-hmm. One of the only foreign agencies allowed there. They bombed it. Mm. Al-Alam, the Iranian television, they just arrested they were able to arrest the journalist, the press crew. Representative.
Yeah.
So they would only like to, the foreign press is confined to Israel, where they only get the Israeli picture. No foreign journalists are allowed into Gaza, so you don't get the real picture. The only ones who have people there are Al Jazeera and 1 or 2 other Arab stations. Mm-hmm. And then Al-Alam, or Press TV from Iran. They're the only ones who have people in Gaza. Mm-hmm. So you only get one side of the picture. Now, their pictures are not shown on CNN, hardly ever, or on BBC. They only get half the picture or quarter of the picture. And of course they always get the other side when the Israeli Foreign Ministry, which has been carrying out a press campaign, a media campaign for the past 6 months preparing for this. This was not decided overnight, the attack on Gaza. It's a well-prepared campaign. They have media advisors who came from the United States who told them how to speak on television, to prevent the generals from making any statements. For instance, during the 2 years ago when they attacked Lebanon, the generals were making all sorts of statements that we will destroy Lebanon. This has all been prohibited. They're not allowed to speak. You only get the official speaker from the Israeli army or from the foreign ministry, and they all say exactly the same thing. It's like a broken record. We are defending ourselves with the rockets and not the rockets, all this blah blah that the Westerners believe, because that's the only picture they see.
They actually believe this.
They believe that the Palestinians decided to break the truce and to shower Israel with rockets. They never say that for the past 7 years, these rockets that are more like fireworks killed 17 people in 7 years. Mm-hmm. That's practically 2 people a year. In 8 years, they killed 20 people. That's 2.5 people per year. Mm-hmm. They never say this. I mean, these are rockets that are fireworks more than anything else. Mm-hmm. 20 people in 8 years. 17 people in 7 years, if you keep the 7 years. They never say this. They don't say that the Israelis, in fact, broke the truce on the 4th of November, the day of the American election, so everybody was engrossed looking at the American elections on the 4th of November. The Israelis decided to bomb supposed tunnels that no one ever saw. They killed 6 people the first day and 5 people the next day. And then they started incursions. This is how Hamas and Jihad answered with these rockets that are fireworks, basically. That's when the truce was broken. Mm-hmm. A full 6 weeks or 5 weeks before it was going to, 6 weeks before it was going to end. And this was done on purpose because the Israelis the army, especially the Israeli army, has been itching to go into Gaza. Mm-hmm. They were against the truce in the first place. And the only reason that the Minister of Foreign Affairs, Yahud Barak, accepted this is that he thought the army wasn't ready for it yet. They wanted more, the addresses of everybody, they wanted the stooges inside Gaza, the spies that they have, to give them exact addresses of the people they want to kill. Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. So he said 6 months, and they need a press media campaign all over the world with the foreign ministry and all the embassies.
So what's the real purpose of this war? When will Israel stop and say, well, we have achieved what we wanted?
Well, because I'll tell you what they want. They want to get rid of the Palestinians. Basically, this is what they want. Long term, they want the Palestinians to get out of Palestine. The whole of Palestine. They can't do it in one shot. They're doing it like a salami, cutting it little by little. Now, there was a plan, if I can go back just a few years, only 7 years, in 2001, a plan called Justified Vengeance. It's an operation. Justified Vengeance, prepared for Ariel Sharon, who was the then Prime Minister, by the now head of the Mossad, of the Israeli Secret Service, General Meir Dagan. Now, General Meir Dagan is a buddy of Sharon's. He was a colonel when they invaded Lebanon in 1982, and he was one of the witnesses of the massacre in Sabra and Shatila. Now, this man is very close to Sharon. He was his public security advisor for the elections in the year 2000, and he became head of the Mossad afterwards. And he's been kept by Olmert as head of the Mossad. This plan was then presented by the Chief of Staff, Shaul Mofaz, Chief of Staff at the time, who's now a minister. The plan was to destroy the Palestinian Authority, to destroy it. At that time, it was not against Hamas particularly, it was to kill, assassinate Yasser Arafat. Destroy the Palestinian Authority, destroy the police that they had been prepared, that they had been arming, and to divide the West Bank into several cantons, into 3 cantons, and to cut it off completely from Gaza. They were quite prepared to have, at that time, in this plan, this Justified Vengeance plan, quite prepared to have 2 governments. In fact, they've worked to have 2 governments, and this is a way to break the Palestinian unity.
Yes.
And they did everything through the Americans, and unfortunately through other stooges in the Arab world, to destroy the unity government. There was a unity government between Hamas and after the death of Arafat. They killed Arafat. I mean, Arafat was murdered.
Was poisoned.
He was poisoned. The poisoning, the actual, we say he's poisoned, and of course he was poisoned. But the decision was taken in June 2003 in a cabinet meeting of the Israeli cabinet under Sharon. Bush was informed of this by Sharon, who flew to America. And Bush gave the green light, go ahead, kill him. A law was passed, a secret law was passed in the Israeli cabinet in September 2003 to get rid of Arafat, and then destroy the police authority that they had built, and find a stooge to replace him. And they have the stooge. They have a quisling who is Mahmoud Abbas, who is a quisling approved by the Americans, by the Israelis, and who does more or less what he's told. Now, how can you have a national movement, national resistance movement, which is under the head of somebody who's collaborating and who's been negotiating on nothing? He has not, for 2 years he's been negotiating with Ehud Olmert. He has not achieved a single success.
Yes. Excuse me, doctor, it seems we have to go to a short break now, and then we will come back right after.
I begin my talk today as a Jew and as an American. The massacre of the people of Gaza is a crime against humanity, but it is a crime that is being carried out not in our name. We are against these crimes.
Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Welcome back. You're watching Gaza Massacre. And before we go back to our guest, we have a report that we would like to show you where we interviewed Dr. Hassan Wagih, Professor of Dialogue and International Negotiations. So let's watch it together.
In the name of God, what we see is a war crime. This is a war crime, capital C, capital W. A conspiracy against the Palestinian people. Actually, all the justifications that were said here and there reveals a very, very wide-scale propaganda model by the Jewish machinery, which tried to depict the whole thing for the international community as a reactionary thing, or as someone who is being aggressed upon and he is retaliating or warding off the aggression. This is unfortunately, this is a convention by so many circles in the international community, on the official level, of course, not on the popular level. Or in the popular level, so many people know what is you see the demonstration all over the world. But on the official levels, the Czech Republic of Czech, which heads the European Union, said something like that. The European Union said Israel. There is no official Israeli who said this, but the EU official said Israel has the right to ward off the aggression. What aggression are they talking about? I think our diplomacy failed to tell the people the truth. The truth is not since 1948, Deir Yassin, Qana 1, Qana 2, Sabra and Shatila, all these massacres has to be looked at when we are talking about crisis management and trend analysis. Any crisis needs to be looked at from a trend analysis. What is the trend? The trend is very clear. How many people were killed? The Israeli Information Center for Human Rights made these statistics 1 year ago, that the Palestinians, 4,800 Palestinians were killed, in comparison of very, very few Israelis compared to that. When we are talking about what we call like fireworks, actually, the rockets are just media rockets that's being launched against the Israelis. But look what the Israelis have already used in this brutal war. It's a brutal occupation. Israel wants even to say that Gaza is the responsibility of Egyptians, and no, this is the responsibility of the Israelis, because this is under occupation. Gaza is under occupation. They try to forget this, and it is their responsibility. All those people who were killed, the responsibility of the occupier. And I'd like very much to remind the whole world with this. The International Court of Justice issued issued a decree, and we have to repeat that in our media, stating that the Israeli forces in the occupied territories really practiced so many brutal acts, and it was the decree of those people who issued that decree. They called this is occupied territories, and they said occupied Gaza, occupied West Bank, and occupied East Jerusalem. And who said that? A surviving Holocaust judge and a Jewish judge. This in the International Court of Justice. We have to refer to what the International Court of Justice said 2005, 3 years ago now. We have to understand that we are in front of a full-fledged conspiracy and massacre. Also, the blockade that continued 6 months before the attack on Gaza was a very, very important thing that we should not forget. Who is the aggressor? The aggressor, those who did the blockade. And I think the Arab diplomacy should have worked very hard on the very early stage of the crisis, which ended up by very, very meticulously prepared aggression and the massacre as you see it here.
Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Welcome back. Now we have a phone call from Abu Yahya from Gaza. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullah. Okay, Abu Yahya, can you please describe the situation there now?
The situation here is very sad. Today, about 45 martyrs have been killed, have been murdered by a cold flooded by the Israeli army as they shot hit a school, and a school in Gaza here in Jabalia capital. They killed more than 40 women, children, and unarmed men. All of them were civilians, and they just hit the school as it is, and 41 were murdered. Electricity is off everywhere in Gaza. Darkness covers everything here in Gaza, so it is a dark night.
لا يا ريت يعلي صوته.
Aeroplanes are all over the place in Gaza, and helicopters, air jets. Every time airplanes are there, we hear lots of shots and lots of shells going from the Israeli army, hitting civilian houses, without even warning the people inside these houses. So it's a very dangerous situation here, and I don't think that the Israeli army are doing any good today, or even in any day, any of the previous days, as they, if we take the percentages of the killings here in Gaza, we find that more than 50% of the martyrs here are children and women. Only about 50 armed, militants from Hamas and Al-Qassam group and other militant groups here. Only around 50 militants were murdered, but others they're all civilians. So the situation is very gloomy here, and you can't find any hope, any near hope. Now I think, as I talk to many people here around the city in Gaza, many people are sad because of the government, the Arab League and the Arab government opinion and the Arab government the view of the situation, as they are equaling between the victims and the killers at the same time. They are asking us to stop shelling Israel, while they don't dare to talk to Israel to ask Israel to just stop it for 24 hours. While when you look at the situation here, you find that Israel has killed more than 650 people here in Gaza within 10 days. It's a huge number here in Gaza. It's a huge number in all over the world, and any human being in the world will feel sorrow and sadness, even will grieve for the death of these people. But the Arab governments are not dealing with us as humans. If any animal in the world suffered, we found many of them spending millions of dollars to save this animal or that kind. But the Palestinians, we think that they are finding us as enemies, nothing else.
Okay, thank you very much, brother from Gaza. And back to you, Dr. Saeed. Is there a timeline for this war? Some people say that they have to finish everything before the 20th of January. I mean, before the newly elected president is in office. Is this true?
Yes, of course, the choice of the date of unleashing this aggression is not a coincidence. They did it on purpose between Christmas and New Year, when everybody is, in Europe at any rate, in America, are in feasts and no one's reading the newspapers. It was chosen specifically on the 27th of December, when most of the ministers are not in their offices, are on holiday. And the same day the European Union presidency changed from France to Czechoslovakia. Now, Czechoslovakia is a stooge of America. Mm-hmm. So they knew perfectly well that the Prime Minister of Czechoslovakia is going to take the Israeli line, which is the American line, because between America and Israel there's no difference. It's the same line. The aggression of the 27th of December was organized with American cognizance and collusion. The Deputy Foreign Minister of America, Secretary of State, a man called John Negroponte, was in Tel Aviv on the 13th, on the 8th of December, just 2 weeks before the aggression, discussing with Meir Dagan, the head of the Mossad, and the other, and Olmert and all the others, about this aggression. This was already premeditated and organized to take place before President-elect Obama comes to power on the 20th of January. This was done on purpose, so that Obama is faced with a fait accompli, which means either Israel has occupied Gaza completely. They claim they don't want to do this. That's what they're claiming. Mm-hmm. But never believe what they say. I mean, their policy is always deception. When they say we're only targeting militants, but they're killing civilians everywhere.
Yes.
Yeah, but the militants are hiding behind civilians. But the militants are civilians. There's no army in Gaza.
Yes.
Everybody is for, and Hamas was elected by the population. They're the majority. They represent the population. Mm-hmm. And in any case, Gaza is a ghetto where everybody is living in tiny areas where you can't discriminate between somebody who's wearing a uniform and the vast majority of his family or the people in the street. You have the most densely populated area in the world in Gaza, and they're bombing from sea, from air, and from land. Mm-hmm. This is an organized humanitarian disaster. It is organized, and it is lies when the Israelis claim that they do not want to target civilians. It's only collateral damage, as they say in the euphemism, which they copy from the Americans. When the Americans massacre people in Afghanistan, in wedding parties, they say it's collateral damage. Same in Iraq. Yeah. These are euphemisms to justify the mass murder of civilians, mm-hmm. because the aim is to terrorize the people. Mm-hmm. The long-term aim is to get the Palestinians to leave Palestine. That is the long-term aim. And as I said, this plan was called the Justified Vengeance. It was applied. They got rid of Arafat. They got their quisling Abbas as a prime minister. Prime minister of an authority that has no authority. What mm-hmm. authority does it have? They're not even allowed to go out of the houses after midnight, because after midnight on the West Bank it's only Israeli soldiers and troops that are allowed in the streets. So the problem is that there's no end game right now. What they want is to destroy as much as possible, terrorize the population into capitulating, like the West Bank Authority has more or less capitulated to Israel's terms. Mm-hmm. They call them moderates, like they call moderate states. Those that are on the American side are called mm-hmm. moderate, but they're not moderate. There's no moderation about this. Either you accept the terms of the occupier or of the American imperialist, or you're an extremist. Mm-hmm. Now, if you're resisting an occupation, you're accused of being a terrorist. Mm-hmm. And therefore they justify the mass murder of people under the assumption they're terrorists, or the terrorists are hiding behind children.
Okay. Doctor, we would like to thank you very much for being with us tonight. I'm afraid we ran out of time, and that wraps up our episode for today. Until we meet you again tomorrow, inshallah. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.